Hello there, whatever you are. Somebody sent me a question on the emails and asked me something like, is it possible to get better at Zazen? If you keep doing Zazen for a while, do you get better at it? Well, the orthodox answer to that is no. Nishijima Roshi used to say when he was in his 80s, if you asked him a question like that, he would say that my Zazen today is exactly like the first time I did Zazen when I was 16 years old, which would be the 1920s sometime, I guess. And he meant it. He meant that it was exactly the same. Shunryu Suzuki talked about beginner's mind, and that this was the ideal sort of zazen to have, was the zazen of a beginner. And one of the reasons for that is that the very notion of improvement is one of the biggest obstacles we have in life in general. And it's because of the nature of improvement. How do you figure out that you've improved? Well, you compare whatever it is that you're experiencing now with your memories of what you think you might have experienced in the past, and then say, I have improved or I have not improved. And so the problem with saying that you can improve in Zazen is encouraging you to compare your memories of the past with your present, and then to kind of, work it out, decide. Most of our problems stem from comparing our memories of the past with our current situation, or our anticipation of the future with our current situation. It's that there was a cliche at Tassajara, the Zen monastery up in Northern California that I used to go to sometimes. They would say, that's comparing mind. I hated it when they said, that's comparing mind. But in a way they were right. The mind that compares things is trouble. That's where you go wrong. Now, having said all that, do you get better at Zazen? Well, to be honest with you, kind of. I would say that my first experiences of Zazen and my experiences of Zazen now are, in the sense that Nishijima Roshi talked about, exactly the same. But there are some differences, and I can tell you the differences by comparing my memory of the Zazen I did a couple of hours ago to the memory of doing Zazen when I was 18 years old at Kent State University. And when I was first starting, it was very difficult just to sit still. I mean, just to plain old sit still for half an hour or whatever amount of time that I'd allotted for myself was really, really hard. And as time went on, that aspect of it got better. It wasn't as hard to just sit still. As far as the sort of restless mind goes, that's Ziggy. And talk about restless minds. He always wants to come out when I come out to do these videos. And then this time he refused to come out, and now he's barking because he hears me outside talking. So I'm going to go see if he wants to come out. He still doesn't want to come out, so I don't know what's in his mind. Anyway, you probably won't see Ziggy in this video. But what was I saying? Oh, I was saying the restless mind that one has during Zazen. Does that improve? I think that's probably maybe the basis of the question when I get asked that. And the answer is, yeah, it comes and goes. So I would say that when I first started sitting, I had a lot of thoughts. And when I first started, when I was a young lad, there was a lot of stuff going on. And as time has passed, there's probably comparatively less stuff going on in my head during Zazen. But that doesn't mean it's just like a total blank and samadhi. Every time I sit down on the cushion, or any time when I sit down on the cushion, there's always sort of some bubbling thoughts going on. But as you practice, it seems like I've gotten better at ignoring that. Because it after a while it happens so often that it becomes kind of repetitive and boring. The thoughts become less interesting. It's not that they stop necessarily. I mean, they might stop for a little while, but they become less interesting. As my friend Greg Fain up at Tassajara once said, it becomes like a piece of gum that you've chewed until all the flavor is out of it and you're still chewing it. At some point you just go, I'm going to spit out this gum because it's gross. It's kind of like that. You're not so attracted, at least I'm not so attracted by my own thoughts anymore, but it comes and goes. There was a guy on the internet a few years ago who was trying to make a name for himself as the person who'd stopped his thoughts from happening. And I thought this was kind of amusing. It was somebody, I don't know how he'd done it, but he'd achieved a state where the constant chatter of the mind had stopped. And he seemed to believe that he was the first person in the world ever to do this, and he was trying to kind of make a name for himself, like explaining the thoughtless state and whatever. And then he kind of disappeared after a while. That happened to me too. After a few years of Zazen, I can remember one day walking around. I was living in Tokyo by this time, because I remember it being a time when I was walking home from work. I was walking towards the train from my workplace at Tsuburaya Productions. And I noticed that I'd been walking for 5 or 10 minutes or whatever, and not a single narrative thought had droned on in my head. And I was going, wow, that doesn't happen very often. And then after that, wow, that doesn't happen very often, it just went back to nothing again. So it was really nice, and it felt kind of special. But after a while, the chatter came back. Never quite as loud. Since that time, it's never been quite as loud and compelling. There's that sort of we tend to repeat the stories of ourselves to ourselves. That guy did that thing, and I hated that thing he did. Well, I don't like this political thing that's going on right now, and I think that the world should be better, and I want to do the things that I look at that thing over there, I want that thing, and there's a lot of stuff going on where you're explaining yourself to yourself. And after a while, I'm going to say I don't know, you just kind of go, I don't care about that guy's opinions anymore. Like, they're your own opinions, but you're kind of like, I know my opinion on that. I don't need to rehearse it to myself anymore. And it starts to seem kind of silly to keep on doing that. That being said, it's a habit. And habits are difficult to break. So anybody who's ever given up a habit like smoking or whatever that they have, that's an addiction or something, can tell you how difficult that is. Well, the addiction to thinking about yourself and describing yourself to yourself and repeating your opinions about yourself to yourself and repeating your opinions about other things about yourself to yourself, it's a strong addiction. And getting rid of a strong addiction takes a lot of work. So, yeah, in a sense, you improve. It's a bit like exercise. It's probably a good analogy, because if you are a weightlifter, let's say, and you start out with 5 pounds and then go to 10 pounds and then 15 pounds and then 50 pounds and then 100 pounds and whatever, you keep on lifting weights. And so it becomes a weight that you could not lift a year ago, you can lift now, because you got better. But it doesn't mean that the action of lifting itself is now effortless. You still got to put some work into the lifting, and there's still weights you can't lift, and there will always be a class of weight that you cannot possibly lift, because no human being can lift that weight. It's sort of like that. And if you stop lifting your weights every day, eventually your ability will go back to what it was before. Then you can no longer lift 50 pounds and no longer lift 25 pounds. And you can no longer lift 10 pounds because you just stopped doing it. You stopped putting in the effort to keep up with it. Same thing with Zazen. You have to keep the effort going. And even after you have a so-called enlightenment experience. A lot of people have these experiences, these kind of crazy, wonderful experiences in Zazen, and decide, oh, that's it, done, figured it out. That's what I was waiting for. Good, see you later, peace out, bye. and then they stop doing it, and eventually all of the ability they had to kind of see through their own BS starts to fade away and vanish because they didn't keep up with the practice anymore. And that's a sad thing. Some of those people talk a good game and make themselves pretty famous, but they're not really worth listening to. You gotta keep up with it. So, can you improve Zazen? Well, the answer is yeah, kinda, but it never improves. So, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. So, if you want to continue to improve my life, that's a weird. Send a donation to me here. That is my only way of making a living. That is my sole support system. Is you guys out there sending me money. I really appreciate it. But if you're having financial trouble, don't do it. Do not send me money because, things are okay here. But the reason they're okay here is because people do keep donating. So I really thank you for that. See you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye.